All right, Sheila, can you hear us?
It's not.
Can you hear us, Sheila? Okay. All right, the time is 7:07 p.m. and I will call this meeting to order. May we have roll call, please?
Thank you. Mayor Reichel,
Here?
Pro Tem Hanrahan,
Here.
Trustee Brentnall,
Here.
Trustee Klassen,
Here.
Trustee Flores,
Here.
Trustee Poston, Trustee Seifert.
Here.
May we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, be seated. The first item on tonight's agenda is public comments. Persons desiring to make public comments on items not on the agenda, please activate the raised hand function in the meeting program. We've got you. That's just for who's not signed in the chambers with us. Yeah, we'll get to you guys here in just a second. Yeah, we'll do online first, then we'll go to the members of the audience. So, Sheila, do we have anybody hands raised?
No, I did not hear from anyone today.
Okay.
And no one has raised their hands.
Okay, sounds good. And then here in the chambers with us,
We've got two signed up,
Okay.
Douglas Sog.
Okay.
He doesn't list the topic of discussion, and then John Lefkowski, who wants to talk about books at the library.
Okay.
Sog.
Very quickly, won't take up too much of your time. My name is Douglas Salg. I'm running for Garfield County Commissioner, District 2. That's the seat that Mr. Martin is vacating. I just wanted to pass these cards out so you guys have my information, my contact information for any questions or concerns you might have.
All right.
That's it.
All right. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice meeting you.
All right. John, come on up, state your name and address.
Yeah, my name is John Lepkowski, resident of Silt for almost 10 years up in Stony Ridge. And if I could pass something out to you, sort of a look-see type deal, is that
Yeah,
okay?
just make sure our town administrator gets a copy to add to the.
Some reading list.
On top of this large book, you'll have a comment from a professional counselor. Let me pass a few of these out. I don't have enough to go around. You could share this.
Yeah, we will keep these and add them to the consent agenda for the next meeting.
Have one more. Okay,
We can share.
guess I have enough. Okay.
John, do you have one for me?
One of these?
Sir?
My concern is, I'd like to see the library safe for children. I've gotten comments from people, they won't go to the library anymore with their children. Well, this afternoon, I've cleaned out the library of the red dot books. And you notice on the books, if you look at them, it'll say adult content. I would like to see the library raised up to the level of a porn store. Not that I frequent it, but I went in there, took this picture. The porn store in Grand Junction must be 18. You have to be 18 to see an R-rated movie. You got to be, 21 to buy tobacco and alcohol. So I don't know what the problem is with the library. They seem to keep pushing First Amendment. I don't think it was designed to have porn anywhere in the library. And it's at low level. Is this, I got a couple of these to pass around. And I don't know if you've been to the Silt Library lately, go to magazine rack, go to the left, and you'll see these books. Well, up until about 3 o'clock this afternoon, I took them all out. I took out about 40 books. Now, I hope you, gentlemen, trustees, mayor, Mike Sawyer, the attorney, I wish, my dream is, or hoping for a miracle, within 200 feet, we're helping sex offenders. As one minister said, it's grooming children. Most sex offenders, I've been told, are addicted to pornography. And I think most people, if you look through those books, maybe you don't want to, a lot of people want to describe it, they won't look through them. We have had over 1,300 signatures here. The library board has ignored it. It's a simple request. Put the books behind glass. We're not trying to ban them or burn them, but isn't it common sense? You wouldn't leave a handgun out at a low level if you had small children or poison. These books are really poison. And if you read that, please pull that out there on top of the big book there. There's a copy for each one of you from Daniel Kale. That's a professional counselor. And he said porn does affect children and teenagers and even adults. Unfortunately, what I heard word is on the street that the county commissioners have given up control of the library. In my opinion, they're out of control. They're out of control. I mean, just a simple request I've been fighting for a year and a half. Put the books behind glass. Every library from Parachute to Carbondale has an office. We're only talking 30 to 50 books in each library. And you'll see on the books it'll say adult content. Just common sense. One of the commissioners said that. They lack common sense. I don't know what their problem is. Pushing the First Amendment to the nth degree. And I would hope that the mayor and the trustees and the advice of the attorney could make an ordinance. Put those books up behind glass with a sign that says adult. Adult must be 18. What's wrong with that? We're not restricting anybody's thing. And also the other problem I have, there's probably $700-800 worth of books. Who ordered these books? Is it a wannabe sex offender or a sex offender ordered these books? Why are these 30 to 50 books in a library? And then the only library I can keep track of is the Silt Library because I live a mile up the road. And so I ran across these books about a year and a half ago, the Finder series. It's all kinds of sex acts between, it's like a young man and an old man showing genitalia. Is that anything you'd want your children to see? I don't think so. So I don't think anybody has them in their home. But we have a resistance on the left is fighting at any book anywhere. So I would hope and pray that you folks could make a resolution to put these books behind glass with a sign, adult content, or just adult must be 18.
Okay, well, thank you for coming in. That's,
Yeah.
thank you.
So if you'll take that piece of that letter there or that sheet there, I'll gather all those books up. I see nobody is brave enough to look at them, or maybe you don't want to look at them. I'll gather them up, okay?
Okay. We will keep
Thank you.
the,
Thank you for your time.
if you present you a piece of paper, we will turn those to our town administrator to be added to the
You can keep
board
them.
meetings for the next.
Keep that paper.
No, I was just gonna pass it to
Oh,
the town
okay.
administrator.
I have enough of it. Oh, by the way, that's Tricia O'Grady that wrote up, a lady that wrote up 2 books here, Finder Series and Prison School. Any of you gentlemen like to see these books? I don't blame you. It's pretty disgusting. Thank you very much, Mayor and trustees, for your time. If you have any suggestions what we can do, you probably all know where I live or have, you can find my number.
Okay, thank you for
How we
coming in,
can
John.
fight this obscenity. I guess they say pornography is legal, but obscenity is not, according to the federal statutes. Whatever, but they're not appropriate for children.
All right. Anybody else signed in for public comments?
No.
Okay. All right, the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, which contains the minutes of the January 8th, 2024 Board of Trustees meeting and the reappointment of the Vale Board members, Kim Hammond and Tammy Gabrielle. Would anyone like to discuss any of these separately or make a motion?
I'll make, no, unless you want to.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Motion by trustee Seifert to approve the consent agenda as presented, seconded by trustee Clausen. All's in favor?
Aye.
All's opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Do any board members have any conflicts of interest with agenda items tonight?
No, sir.
I have none either. Any agenda changes by board or by staff?
No, Mayor.
Okay. Nothing there. All right. Moving right along, we will jump into resolution number 4, series 2024. A resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Silt, Colorado, acting by and through its water and wastewater activity enterprise, authorizing the town to execute a contract amendment for engineering services by Dewberry Engineers, Inc., for construction of the water treatment plant. And I will turn it over to our attorney.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. We also have representatives here from Dewberry as well, and if you guys want to.
That's Pat Radabaugh and Sam Franson from Dewberry.
Gentlemen, thank you for coming. So we
Carolyn
have.
Drive.
Yeah.
Heroin for a little bit of it.
Well, the town of Silt's had a long history with Dewberry since the beginning of the project, the water treatment plant, where they initially contracted with them in February 1st of 2022 to solicit bids and then subsequently, November 15th, 2022, we entered into a contract with them for design services for the water treatment plant, wherein Dewberry undertook to work with our contractor, Garney, to create a design and to go through the process of the CMAR, which is to come up with a price and a design for construction of the water treatment plant. So now before us this evening is a third amendment, or I guess the second amendment to the contract for construction services, where Dewberry will serve to and complete a large scope of work that is in the contract. They've itemized their estimates for each portion of the cost. And as well, there is a little bit of overlap, I believe, still with the November 15th, 2022 contract to complete that, but they came in under budget, under their estimate for the design services contract, and now we're entering into the final phase, which is construction. So I'll turn it over to you for comments and maybe go through the scope of work.
So, excuse me. The scope of work services during construction is primarily just to, if I had to summarize it, is to follow up to make sure that the CMAR and the other contractors install their work correctly, procure the correct equipment, and it gets started up correctly. So we go through all that process, receiving submittal data from the contractors to make sure that it is exactly what we specified, to going through getting that equipment installed, making sure that it's started up correctly, and then optimizing it during the initial stages of operation so that it can operate and perform as specified and as designed. So it's basically a overall QA/QC of the work that's being installed to make sure that it meets the design intent and is operating properly.
The other piece of that too, Pat, is the state requires us to sign a form at the end of construction saying it was built as designed. So it gives us the comfort level to do that.
Excuse me, can you slide a little bit closer?
Sure.
There you go, thank you.
Sam's quiet already.
That's a critical thing, is that the engineers need to certify that the construction happened in accordance with the plans in order for us to get our permit finished up. And the only way the engineers can do that is if they have an ongoing observation program in place for the construction.
So I guess I would be looking for maybe some more clarification on why the Dewberry's liability was lowered to 5 million.
Well, if I could jump in there, one thing I would point out is during the design phase of the contract, we did negotiate with Dewberry. We actually raised it from the cost of the contract to 5 million. So back in November of 2022, there was some back and forth, and you'll see the terms and conditions are the same as they were for the design contract from the November 15th, 2022 contract. So just point of clarification, we did negotiate it up with them from the cost of their design contract to a $5 million liability.
And there were, Mr. Mayor, in 2022, that was a negotiating point that was brought to the board as part of the approval of that contract.
I think we felt that was a fair amount or sufficient, I would say, because if something, I don't think Dewberry's going to be, well, we don't know, but if at the time there is something wrong with the design, we feel that that's an adequate amount.
So, and hopefully it doesn't happen. So we have a design issue that comes up at month 15 into this project. And Dewberry's maximum liability is 5 million, and it's going to be $5 million for Dewberry to come up with a solution. Dewberry's just paying themselves. I mean, I'm just not sure how this.
Excuse me.
I don't know we're building a $30 million water plant that I want to know when it's done, it works, and then if it doesn't, the town is going to cost us $0.
So there, in the world of if something went wrong, that either occurred at the design phase or the construction phase, you can have a product that doesn't work that was designed correctly.
Correct.
It gets constructed incorrectly. And so there are two potential pots of money to resolve a non-functioning issue with the plant. Again, if it was design caused, there would be up to $5 million to resolve that. If it was a combination of design and construction, there would be the combination. There's no limitation in the Garney contract on liability damages. And then if it's solely construction related, we would be looking at Garney to make good on that. I think the view that we had, so if something comes up during construction that is a change order, I mean, I think we would be looking at, that was, Dewberry did not fully contemplate this at the time of the design. I think Dewberry would be responsible for coming up with that design to remedy the final plans. Because they have tendered what are final construction plans to the town and certified that they meet various requirements that are in the contract, some of which we have actually enhanced through this amendment process to make sure that it's very clear that, for example, the primary drinking water standards are being addressed, that the issues with iron and manganese are being addressed, that, you know, so we're getting additional detail in the contract amendment. And they are certifying that this plant that they have designed is going to do what it's supposed to do. So-
Dewberry's also doing QA and quality control of the construction process itself, but they bear no liability for those outcomes. It's not purely just a design function at that point. It was stated just a few minutes ago that they're doing QA and QC on the process of the construction.
They're the construction monitors, yes.
And,
In
and
addition
this
to-
means they have no liability for
I
anything
don't
during
wanna
that phase?
Say that they have no liability at all.
It says it's
There's a
capped at
liability
5 million.
cap.
So if there's a construction error that's greater than that, they're limited to that.
They're limited to that. That was a negotiated point at the time the 2022 agreement was entered into.
I guess, so are you guys gonna have a physical person on site every day for construction?
We have budgeted to have one person there approximately 3 days a week on average. So at the beginning of construction, there'll likely be somebody there full time. And as activities slow down, less often. And we did that just from a budget and cost perspective to be cost sensitive. So during the things that usually cost high dollar, to Mayor Pro Tem's point, we really like to make sure somebody is present. For example, installing the footings, making sure the rebar is correct on the footings and the slab, and getting the building installed correctly.
Okay. And then will we have a record of when that person was on site a weekly update to the town of?
So we can structure it many different ways. Usually at the end of a project, we turn over all of our daily reports. We can have those submitted monthly. We can submit them weekly,
Okay.
however you want.
Everyone. I hate to be.
They can submit them daily at the end of the day to you guys. We are open, and we don't want to clog up people's inbox, but also want to make sure all the information gets shared.
Get shared, yeah. I just don't want to be at the end of this project and something went wrong on April 15th, and the thing is, we didn't have a guy there on April 15th, so, I would like to see those weekly.
And we have been discussing internally that obviously the town will have some of its staff participating in reviewing the construction as it happens, so that there is an independent set of eyes beyond Dewberry that's looking at these things, and we're talking about how to structure that within the town.
So that'd be some staff to do that, to take that role on? Because I think come to light, some things recently, there's a lot of potential for a lot of things to fall through the cracks, because I don't know that how much monitoring staff is gonna be able to actually commit to this project now. So, I mean, what's our backup, or what is exactly our side of it that's gonna protect us? Who is our guy? You know what I mean?
Well, we fully intend to have Trey involved
Okay,
as much as we can.
all right. So Trey, and then Trey, you guys report to Trey. Is that how that works? Trey oversees you guys? Or-
That's not the way
No.
it's written.
No,
The-
but just kind of
so-
make sure things aren't falling through the cracks and aren't being done wrong.
Yeah, so there would be meetings on, we haven't gotten into the nuance, but a weekly meeting or something between a representative of the town and Dewberry to go through, and probably Garden.
I think we put
all three
bi-weekly.
parties would be there.
Yeah.
I think we have bi-weekly in the contract where we usually go through a scheduling concept for they lay out schedule, what submittals are coming, what field activities are going to be occurring, so we can schedule all the necessary inspections and get people to see the necessary things that are particularly super important.
And we're doing weekly meetings now.
So I guess,
those
yeah.
aren't gonna
So what I'm trying to,
change.
what I'm trying to wrap my mind around is, so, I went through a build up in Snowmass, and we actually hired our own individual staff member for 4 years to do what you're proposing to do now, and then they reported to SGM. So that protected the town, the district, and got everything taken care of because he was on site. But we don't have that individual. We're hiring you guys to be that overseer, and then just trusting and counting on what you do, and to be honest and be fair with the town is.
I mean, I think there is an additional layer, and what you're talking
Right,
about
that's
is,
what I'm asking about.
you know, like Rifle, when they built their water treatment plant 6-7 years ago, they also hired someone with experience as the full-time person, and I think URS was the engineer of record on that, if I recall, so there was someone at the town working with somebody at the engineering firm, who then they both were working with the contractor to manage the project. Again, we're having an internal dialogue about how to properly structure that as to what the outside town component of that is. But again, the documents are written such there are requirements for meetings, and, you know, ultimately the town's direction, after consulting with Dewberry and the contractor, you know, we're the client, we say, this is what we think needs to be done in order to meet the terms of the contract and the construction documents that have been delivered. So, again, there is a little bit of a kind of a loose end on the town side as to exactly how we're going to make sure that outside oversight occurs. But it's something we have internally been talking about.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was asking. Okay.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
No?
This is just an
No, well,
action item, not a
Yeah,
public hearing.
I had one quick question. I mean, you guys said you raised it to the 5 million. So the cap to the contract price, was that Dewberry's contract of the 1.1, or is that the entire
So if
project's contract?
and Chris, I forget if when you came onto council, but
Yeah, maybe this was before.
yeah. So at the time in late 22, no, mid 22, concerns about the operational capacity of the plant were growing and being, there was a lot of concern about getting an engineer involved to help figure out what the problems are, to start work on a design, and to start meeting grant requirements. And Jeff, correct me if I'm misstating any of this. And there were some, if I recall correctly, they were DOLA grant packages, or maybe it was CDPHE grant packages. Okay, that had a specific deadline. And for us to meet that deadline, we had to get Dewberry on boarded with the project by a specific date. And so Dewberry sent us their standard contract, and I went through that and identified all the things that I thought were a problem. One of which was that Dewberry in their standard contract has a provision that says that their liability was capped at the amount of the contract. In other words, however much we paid them, that was the limit of what we could get back. And I will tell you, as a municipal lawyer who reviews engineering contracts, that is something we are increasingly seeing engineering companies do. And, you know, I'm sure it has to do with insurance companies and trying to mitigate loss risks. But we pushed back and we said, we can't build and at the time, I think we thought it was an $18 million plant, without having some reasonable level of recourse against the engineer if in fact a design failure had occurred. And so we went back and forth. In fact, I think it was with your national office that we were communicating with. At the
Oh, yeah,
time.
I'd get this, yes, we did.
Yes.
Get people involved.
Going back and forth as to where we could get that number at and where negotiations broke down based upon the time frame we had to get something to you to approve so we could get them on board to hit the next target deadline, was we ended up at 5 million. That's how we got there. And I don't know, I don't know if there would have been more potential to negotiate that number if there had been more time. What I can tell you based upon my recollection was once we started going over 5 million, there was a lot of pushback from the risk management office at Dewberry's central headquarters. So that's the history behind that particular contract point.
All right, thank you.
And we still do have, Garney has liability in this project too. It's just, at the end of the day, if there is an issue, you end up with two companies saying they built it wrong and they engineered it wrong, and we, as the stewards of these citizens' money, are the ones that have to make sure that we have some recourse on that. So that's the only reason I brought that point up. So and then just,
It's a very valid point, and it's something that, this is obviously one of the biggest pieces of infrastructure this town is going to do. But, even with smaller projects to redesign a road or a sewer line or something like that, we're going to see similar language. And just know that your legal counsel pushes back on that. We don't just be like, oh, that's the way it is, We recognize that that's an issue for the client, and it's something we try to push as far back as we can.
all right. Other than that, I've got nothing to add. So, like I said, this just is an action item, not a public hearing. So, someone would like to make a motion.
Well, Mr. Mayor, make a motion to approve resolution number 4, series 2024 as presented.
I'll second.
Motion by Trustee Seifert to approve resolution number 4, series 2024 as presented. That was seconded by Trustee Clausen. All's in favor?
Aye.
All's opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming in tonight for that quick little meeting.
Have a safe drive back.
As long as the snow squall is over near Georgetown.
All right, the next item on the agenda is resolution number 7, series 2024. A resolution of the Town of Silt Board of Trustees, Colorado, amending resolution number 23, series 2016, and approving the amended major subdivision preliminary plan for the property formerly known as Divide Creek Center and now commonly known as Rosalinda Planned Unit Development. For it. Applicants would like to come up to the table, and then we'll turn this over to Planner Jane.
Doug and Mitchell, why don't you come on up, and Dennis can be back in reserve. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And Sheila, could you make me the co-host?
Dennis, you
You're already a co-host, Mark.
Co-host.
bring a chair up there
okay.
if you want. Might as well have everybody up there.
Okay, all right. Okay, thanks, Mr. Mayor. This is an amended preliminary subdivision plan, and actually, it's a very minor amendment. And as you know, this is Rosalinda. They've been going through the land use entitlement process now for about a year and a half, and there's a longer history, of course, with Divide Creek. I do want to I want to note one error on the planner staff report related to the project attorney. Chad Lee is still their attorney, but he's no longer with Balcom and Green. I did not catch that when I put the staff report together. He's now for JVAM. I'm not sure what they call it, whether it's JVAM or JVAM, whatever. Anyway, Roslenda is a pretty big project there. It's to the west of BLM. BLM is right here, but to put it in the proper context, what is being changed is the following. Tract 1, which is right in this area, if you can see my cursor up there, that's being enlarged from 3.7 acres to 4 acres. This loop road is being shortened in depth from north to south. So this is the present proposed loop road, and it did come down a little further. And the other major change, well, not a major change, the other change is that there's not this interior loop road. So there used to be a access point right in this area, and that is going away. So instead of having 3 access points onto the frontage road, there'll be 2 access points into the frontage road. The basic engineering is still the same, the drainage is still the same, water and wastewater, all the deep utilities. Everything's very similar. And this change originally came up, Valley View Hospital, someone on their board asked to meet with a number of developers in the valley. And they met with Roslenda, and that deal did not go through, but I think they liked increasing the multifamily housing. So this is the change, and essentially Tract 2 is now a little bit smaller. The number of dwelling units here is still the same, but before, I believe Mr. Caruth had 72 units in Tract 1. There will still be the same number of units here, but Tract 1 being larger, there'll be fewer housing units on the Tract 2 being held by Roslenda. The other changes are that these 2 lots that are the residential lodging mixed use, these lots get slightly bigger. Instead of being 4 acres, they're closer to 5 acres. The other change in the plan has to do with the island itself. And that would be proposed to be split into 2. One where the HOA would be in charge of maintenance, and then the island area right next to the event center, that would still be held by Roslenda, and they would be able to maintain that and have access to that for their low-impact activities. So at the end of the day, the number of dwelling units is the same. One thing that needs to change is we need to have a little bit of tweak in the zoning, because the zoning had specific numbers listed for some of these lots and certain number of units per lot per acre. And so they need to be modified, and basically there'll be 3 or 4 tweaks to the zoning. And that will have to be done by ordinance, since it was approved, zoning by ordinance. And the other thing that would have to be changed is the development agreement, because the development agreement has specific numbers in specific areas. So there's a paragraph and a half of one of the sections of the development agreement would have to be modified. And this information, the little tweaks was brought up to me during the initial process, but in looking further, the land use will have to be modified. The town attorney and I think that can be done pretty easily with the final plan application, which they are already working on. The town ordinance, the town code, does not have any guidance regarding what happens when someone amends a preliminary plan. A lot of communities have when something's very minor. Planning commission only needs to deal with it. Nothing is mentioned in the town code. Just for safety, I just thought it was best to be bring in front of the planning commission and bring in front of the board of trustees. My findings, that the application is complete, the engineering is consistent with the previous approvals, and it still meets the comprehensive plan. Planning Commission reviewed this at their December 5th meeting, and the Planning Commission recommends unanimously they approve the amended preliminary plan for Rislenda with the conditions noted below. We did show them a draft resolution at the meeting itself. There was some discussion at the Planning Commission, and there was basically discussion that, hey, it would be great if some of these units that have been designed to be multifamily in Tract 1, it'd be nice if some of those could be, sometime in the future, be made, as condominium units or for individual ownership. That was not put in as a condition. The staff recommendation is approve the preliminary plan amendment with the following conditions. 1, all representations made in the application, in writing and during the public hearing process are to be considered conditions of approval. And second, that the town attorney prepare a resolution which includes the previous conditions of approval. That's been done. And 3, that as part of the final plat application, the development agreement and the PUD zoning guide be adjusted after a public hearing process to make sure that all total residential unit counts and density requirements are in conformance with the updated plan. That condition number 3 there, that should be added to the resolution because I did not put it in there at the beginning itself. I am going to ask the attorney if he has any comments on the resolution or anything else, and then the applicants would like to give a brief presentation. They want to touch base, on some of the larger issues with Rislenda, since they're in the process of making that final plan application. So first, Michael, do you have anything to add?
My only comment is that if the board moves to approve the resolution, that you just include a provision that says at the time they submit the final plat that they will also submit an application to modify the PUD, because there's just a few little cleanup items that need to happen. We don't want that to fall through the cracks, so it makes sense to tether those 2 applications together.
And with that, staff's open to questions before the applicant makes their presentation.
I guess I do have just a quick question, so maybe they can address it. I know it was one of our big concerns. It looks to me now we've lost a little bit of our park area or public play area.
No, I don't believe that's the case.
Or is it, well, I can't see underneath, so I couldn't see what was.
No, this was all, this area here where the modification is, that was all multifamily housing.
Okay.
Or a
I couldn't
mixed-use
see
zone
underneath it
district
there,
right
so-
here. So nothing is, the only real change is the loop road is not quite as deep north to south, and that there is one less access point onto the frontage road.
Okay.
And I do just want to, clarify for the record that the document that's in here for review were the documents that were necessary for you to see, including an updated engineer's letter on the traffic and that kind of stuff. Part of the application was the entire preliminary plan, which was quite lengthy, and you had a separate link to look at that if you wanted to. So I just wanted to note that.
And the parking areas, they'll be accessed from the loop road, correct? Just
Yes.
because I
Yeah.
didn't see it on there.
And everything, all the other conditions to the plan remain the same, and they have to have a site plan review for every lot or tract that's developed.
Okay.
So, and there's more heavy lifting to do after the preliminary plan. But nothing, it was a very minor change, and I understand why that was made.
The removal of that access point, there's no negative impact on emergency services or anything like that in terms of being able to access areas in the middle of Tract 1?
No, we don't think that's a problem. And we did have our engineer look at it.
They did,
and,
okay.
There are some improvements that will be made on the frontage road, and basically they are right right-hand turn deceleration lanes. There's not quite enough traffic to require a left-hand turn stacking lane to come into that project, that'd be going from east to west.
Great, thank you. The only other thing I wanted to mention briefly was I'm aligned with planning and zoning. I'd love to see a mix of ownership opportunities in that. We've talked about it before with an applicant back in December about how ownership changes the culture of an area and helps contribute to the town's culture and growth as we continue to grow in other ways. I would urge you to consider that as not a problem, but an opportunity from a capital perspective as well. You know, it may subsidize things that you're doing later on if you get more buyers earlier in the process. So that's the upside to you. I think the upside to Silt is having a good mix of renters and owners. It changes the nature of how a community acts.
So, can I raise a question? Is it, so you're saying that you would prefer to have ownership rather than rental housing?
A mix.
A mix?
Mix, yeah. I think
Yeah, I mean, we're
modern communities tend to include a mix.
looking at it both ways.
And again, I think there's a benefit to the developer, to, you know, various other investors and participants on the business side, as well as the community of Silt as we continue to grow and evolve, to have a mix of longer-term owners and shorter-term renters. And in a lot of cases, renters can become owners once they're in that space and they love it. If they have an opportunity to buy, they likely will.
Yeah. No, I understand both perspectives for sure.
And just to comment on that a little bit, the opportunity is in the PUD, in the zoning we're not restricting this to a rental project in the zoning. So, you know, the way the zoning was written, there's an opportunity for ownership in the future.
Excellent.
If you want to go ahead
Okay.
and present what you've got, and then we'll follow up with any other questions.
Sure. Sheila, can I share screen? Maybe.
Mark, you'll have to stop sharing yours so Doug can get on.
Just did that.
Please. Thank you.
Right, I'm getting there.
Mark, you still sharing?
Sorry, I have to open system preferences.
Mark, do you mean to have your camera on?
No, I should have had it on earlier.
It's like the Russian
You're a
doll. It's
star.
just mark and mark and mark and mark.
All right, hang on, guys. I'm going to share screen again. You think you've got it all figured out?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. You want to go through a minute? Okay. Cool. So start with that.
All right. Yeah, hey, gentlemen, sorry. I got my shingles vaccine this morning, so I feel like I'm about 30% here. I apologize. I'd much rather be at home in bed. But we thought we would, well, thanks for your time tonight. Thanks for bringing this back to attention. We thought we would just, because it's been a while since we've been in front of you, and because, you know, planning and visions and everything continue to evolve, you know, all in the right way. Put a couple slides in front of you just to sort of reground us and remind us and just maybe bring you up to speed a little bit for some of the changes. Knowing that all of this is going to come in front of you again for site plan. Of course, Rislenda, it's a Danish word. I think we talked about that, you know, 2 or 3 years ago. But it's a Danish word that means rippling, and we think it's very appropriate. The next slide just is the team, right? I think we've seen this here before, but we are now working with Bruce Barth out of Glenwood. One of the first site plans you guys are going to see is for a concept called the Beacon. It's our restaurant market for Tract 3. And I'm hoping you guys see that this summer. And so I'm working with Bruce right now just on architecture and how that's all going to get laid out and everything. The next slide, again, should be familiar, but it's, you know, the heavy yellow is the 51 acres, right? So that's sort of the legal definition as it stands today. The green slashed box, that's what Dennis is keeping. The blue slashed box is what we've ceded to Silt. It's the riverbed that we've ceded to Silt. And then the island itself is just not developable, and so we've sort of removed it from the subsequent slides here just because it's not developable. And so if we go to the next slide, you can kind of see then how this all lays out. And so as Mark alluded to, the loop road, the east-west portion of that loop road has moved to the north about 50 feet. So not a lot there, but that was in order to give Dennis appropriate space and not more than he wanted or needed there in Tract 1. Tract 1 and the first half of Tract 2 now will stay with the current owner, right? So that's Dennis, that's Silt 70 LLC at the moment. So instead of those 4 acres of Tract 1 staying with the current owner, it's now 5.25 acres staying with Tract 1. Tract 2, Lot 2, and everything else on that screen there will get transferred over to August Group LLC, which again is just me and Kohlberger. It's not a big, multinational conglomerate. And then we did split up that island, right? So as Dennis and I were talking about amenities for the people that live on Rislenda, we want them to have, access to the water. And the way that the event center was requiring the island and the way that the beacon is requiring the island, they didn't really leave any access for residents. And so we've dedicated about an acre on the western end of that island that will be owned and operated by the HOA. It'll be signed residents only. They'll have, a loop trail and maybe some, a gazebo and a picnic spot or something like that, just to give them, allow them that opportunity living so close to the river to actually be a part of the river. Everything else is remaining the same. Our development objectives, again, this is not, this isn't a typical, 200 house subdevelopment that's coming in front of you. We're really thinking of this very, very differently as almost its own community in a way, right? Almost a campus of sorts, because you think about a campus, a college campus, or a professional campus. Each of the buildings interrelates to the other. They each have a purpose, and then there's a purpose in and amongst the buildings in how they relate to each other. And we're thinking of this in very much the same way. And it's also a development that is to be strategized. That last line there in the first paragraph, I think, is important. Strategized, operated, and grown in-house. This is not, I'm not a developer that is going to get all the approvals and then turn around and chunk it out and sell it and go on to my next thing. This is my life here, right? This is we're dedicating everything that we have into this, and our goal is to own it and operate it and run it and be able to manage it up to that vision that we're creating now. Next slide. This is probably updated from the last one you saw, but the approach is to first prioritize our core elements, right? So if you think of this as, again, as a campus, but you also think of it as a brand and a magnet of sorts for the greater region, you really want to focus on your core elements first. And for us, that is the Beacon Restaurant and Market. It'll be the event center, and then to a secondary extent, it'll be these riverfront cottages, I think that we've talked to you about before. In this, with an asterisk there, that second line in the chart, Tract 1 multifamily. I'm not representing Dennis. I'm not representing his timeline or his his path forward, but we are locked at the hip, quite fortuitously, actually. We're locked at the hip for the moment, and so we're trying to represent the whole picture. That at the moment, that Tract 1 multifamily is scheduled to be among the very first things we do. Hopefully toward the latter end of this year. The Beacon, we're now envisioning it to be, sort of a market up front and a restaurant in the back. Breakfast and lunch, it's going to look and feel more like a coffee shop in a deli, and then in the evenings, something that you might put a clean shirt on for, and go and have a nicer meal and spend time with people that are important to you. The market, we're looking at some non-perishables, right? So we know that there's quite a need for that in the area here, and so we'll have probably some fruits and veg and some dairy and some meats, but then also quite a few non-perishables. Trying to focus on Italian specialties and maybe some global foods and that sort of a thing. And then it'll be available for small events and renting out and that sort of a thing. Track 6 is the event center. I don't know that the vision has changed here, but as we're talking about this, you can see in the top corner there, just as a reminder where these things are sort of scheduled to be placed. The event center itself, I think we're looking now at the main room of somewhere around 6,000 square feet. That's enough for about 650 people for a conference, right? So we don't have to go out to Rifle Airport anymore. We don't have to cram ourselves into the Hotel Colorado or break it up into three nights to be able to do it at Miners Claim. Weddings of 400, but also think about just a holiday, Christmas market indoors, right, inside this event center, and other just really cool things that we are going to be able to do with this space. Next slide. The Riverside Cottages, top corner, right, you can see how they sort of line up between the Beacon and the event center, right up against that channel. That's really quite beautiful. And those are designed to be short-term rentals, but we'll treat them as lodging. You'll check in, you'll check out. There'll be room service. There'll be full service meal service supported by the Beacon. So it'll feel much more like a high-end cabin retreat than it will just sort of be left on your own short-term rental. And then the final slide. I like this slide a lot. It's PowerPoint. It's not, probably the most professional, sort of diagram you guys have ever seen, but it does a really good job of laying out the vision, right? So phase 1. So the Beacon on the left side, the riverfront cottages there through the middle, with a small clubhouse, that's there. And then the event center, and the unfortunate parking that we know we're going to have to deal with. But if it's planted right and landscaped well, and we've got berms out there, some other sort of blockers, for sight and sound, I think it could be really something very cool. And then of course Dennis's 100 units there up above it. So I think that these slides, happy to make this a conversation, but also just wanted to give you guys a little bit of a reminder of what it is we're trying to work at. And at the moment, we are on schedule to, nothing really has changed. I think we're very, very eager to get site plans in front of you guys. Any questions or things you want to talk about on this? It's not the core of what we're here for tonight. It was just sort of an also opportunity.
I'd appreciate it if we could get a copy of that preliminary build schedule, knowing that it's not etched on a stone tablet, but even to help us in ongoing discussions track progress against that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any questions?
No, I'm glad you guys came back and
Still here.
Get me back excited about it.
Yeah,
you
we
know,
are too.
For sure.
This is my excited face tonight.
You're not contagious, are
You're
you?
present. That's
Just being here on a deathbed.
It's not a contagious thing, it's
Exhausting.
just that vaccine wiped me out.
So I guess my only question is the island. This has been an issue for me since this project came up. First it was, we want the island to be 100% private. We don't want citizens walking through here. It's the vision of the project.
Yeah.
To now it's, well, maybe this part's not usable, so we'll go ahead and give that to the residents to go visit on. So I'd like to hear some backstory or some why on that.
Well, I felt like I gave good backstory before, but, it's an amenity for our residences. It's not open to the public. It'll be signed as such. And there will be physical barriers or other things that prevent them from not being where we don't want them to be.
And I think the discussion about usable or not usable is really for development purposes, for buildings and
I
structures.
can't build on it, but it's
You know,
beautiful.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's still the amenity, it's the river and the island are the amenities for this project. The river has been dedicated to the town, so and we have paths that go as part of this plan, on the east and west sides of the project down to the river. And then the island is, luckily, can't be developed with a lot of stuff, so it'll be a recreation amenity for the project and for folks at the Beacon and the Event Center.
And at one point, that exact line was presented as an offer to you guys, to be your guys' city park, and you didn't want it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's, all you can do is walk around it. It doesn't help the town as far as park dedication land goes.
It's not soccer fields.
You can
No,
put a
it's not.
baseball field over there.
Baseball field there, no soccer field.
You
It'd be
can,
wet,
but
so.
it's not gonna work well.
The comment I would have is the whole island has the same kind of an amenity. It has the wildlife and the ecosystem and the access to the water, both the tributary as well as the main stem. So the western part of the island is not a cast-off.
It's probably the richest part of the island.
It's as good as any other part of the island, and
Because it's
it'll be
left
a
alone.
nice amenity for the people that live there. And, when Mitchell says that the rest of the island is completely private, well, it's going to be available to anybody that wants to be at the Beacon or be at the event center, and so there will be plenty of opportunity for people in Silt as they use his amenities
Yeah.
to have access to the island. So it, I think it's a very cool concept.
Thanks.
I think that's my only, I'm fine with moving the road 50 feet up. I don't think that affects anything, but there's just something that rubs me wrong at this point about making a little part of the island now residents only. I think that, I don't know what it is. It just, at this point in the project, I know this is a large development, but it seems like every development that comes to this town, they have a grand vision, and then once they, start grinding away, well, then that vision's got to change, and usually it's driven by money, not necessarily what's best for the town or best for the project.
This was a decision driven by what's best for the project.
I would say that CDOT is very happy to have 2 access points and not 3 on the frontage road.
And still maintaining a loop road.
A loop road,
I think
yeah.
That's key, that there's still, if there's an issue with one side of the loop, there's another side.
Another side, yeah.
I would just, for context, so in the annexation and development agreement, we included a provision that if the 3.9 acre parcel, and Mitchell, I think that's the event center parcel. If that gets rezoned to something other than an event center, then the town has the right to have a further discussion about whether the island should come into public ownership. So, again, to go back to the discussion we had about a year ago around the island and the desire to have that use compatible with the event center vision that they were trying to create. Under that scenario, you know, the argument was that it wasn't appropriate to have it as a full public use amenity. But if that goes away, then we've allowed for the town to be able to further discuss that point.
So how would that play into part of the island being dedicated to the HOA and the rest of it's still part of? So at that point, if they don't develop the event center, the town still doesn't get to decide to do with that little parcel, or is that still?
It would probably continue to be an HOA parcel, but if you look at the map, the bulk of the island is to the east of that, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah. I just think if it ever came to it where the town was in charge of that island, it's hard to say, this is your citizens to this point. Not this island is yours, so.
Well, it's an eventuality that it sounds like, at least for now, is not gonna happen, as they've got a timeline to develop the event center, so. But I just wanted you to be aware that we contemplated that if there was a shift in how development was occurring on this property, the island would come back into the discussion.
And our zoning for the event center parcel is pretty specifically event center, so to do something alternative would take a rezoning, as I think Mike said, which would require us to come back, and then this discussion happens regarding the island, but it is an event center parcel.
All right. Well, if there's no.
We have a conversation about parking with this tract one. Because I was just looking at the spaces.
So because that's multifamily, as well as the other parcels which are commercial, and again, there's a provision in the annexation agreement about this, parking will be determined at the time of a site plan review.
Okay, gotcha.
So that kind of the specifics of how many units and how much parking and landscaping and how the site lays out and to make sure it meets the town's code requirements will happen at that next.
Okay, gotcha. So we did have a conversation, I just forgot that part of it. Okay.
It was about the parking on the loop, potential parking on the loop road.
Yeah.
Not on the interior of those lots.
Exactly. All right, thanks for jogging my memory.
This is a public hearing, so there's no more discussion by the board. I'll open up the public hearing. All right, the time is 8:14 p.m. and I'll open up the public hearing for resolution number 7, series 2024. Persons desiring to make a public comment on this agenda item, please activate the raised hand function in the meeting program. Or Sheila, any phone calls or emails in regards to this agenda item?
No, Mr. Mayor, I did not hear from anyone.
Okay.
I do not show any raised hands.
All right. Would anyone in the public with us like to speak to this agenda item? All right. No comments in the chamber either, so at 8:14 p.m. I will close the public hearing and open up to further discussion by the board or a motion. And with that motion, we do need to add number 3 of the staff recommendations. That's on page 57 of the packet if you need to.
I could try it. I guess, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 7, Series 2024, as written, including staff recommendation number 3, as part of the final plat application and the AR, ADA, and the PUD zoning guide be adjusted after a public hearing process to make sure all total residential unit counts and density requirements are in conformance with the original plan. And what else?
Just, I guess, to add on to that the applicant will submit an application to amend the PUD in conformance with that at the time that they file for their final plat.
Okay, so with the condition that the applicant submit an application to amend the PUD
Zoning guide and the,
zoning guide
and the amended and restated.
and the
annexation
amended
development
and
agreement.
restated development agreement.
Second.
All right. Motion by trustee Clausen to approve resolution number 7, series 2024, adding staff recommendation number 3, and that the applicant will submit an application in, I can't read my own writing. In coordination with the ARADA,
Well, with the final plan.
with the final plan.
application, Yeah.
With the final plan.
Otherwise, they're coming before you separately again, and that's not necessary.
Okay, with the final plan. And that was seconded by trustee Flores. All's in favor?
Aye.
All's opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks to you.
Thank you, guys.
Guys.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Next up is the December 2023 financial report. I will turn this over to Treasurer Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. These are for the month of December and they're preliminary, I'd like to say, because we still have invoices that are coming in that are not included in these numbers. So it's not technically 100% yet. We exceeded all of our revenues as far as taxes go, sales tax, use tax, lodging tax. We're doing well with all of those above where we thought we were going to be. We are below all of our expenses from where we thought we were going to be, except for that the park impact and the construction impact, but we knew we were going to spend almost every dollar of that putting those improvements into the parks. Trash, water, wastewater, irrigation, service fees. We were pretty close to being on budget, a little bit above on where we thought we were gonna get with our revenues. And there was only a couple of funds, the water and wastewater fund, that we did not get, but we're saving those grant funds. So those revenues will get in this year or 2025. And then the park impact fund was a little lower than we thought we were going to get as far as revenues go. And I'll answer any questions you may have.
All right. Any questions?
Just a quick one, Amy. Sales tax
Yeah.
declined in November and December. That's a bit of a surprise.
We are lower than last year, yes,
Yeah, that-
but still 5.5% higher overall for the year.
I was just surprised to see that dip in those 2 months, thinking about the holidays, et cetera, et cetera. I
Right.
genuinely like, wait a minute, is that right?
It is.
It's not you. I was just
Inflation.
like, that seems odd, but the numbers are, the math is mathing.
That's very true.
All right. Yeah. Questions or comments?
It's still above for the
No,
year.
thank you, Treasurer Tucker.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
All right. Next up is the administrator and staff comments.
I don't have anything to add to anything.
What?
At this point. I know, it's a surprise. What can I say?
That's the sign of a short-term one.
Yeah. Just mailing it in now.
I have something I can share if they want. I did the numbers for the overtime. Are you guys interested in
Yes,
and
please.
going, okay. So I went back to 2020, and so there was approximately 480 hours in 2020, which would have cost about 7,500 in overtime to the town. In 21, there was about 1,050 hours, which equated to $15,600. In 2022, there was about 800 hours, which was $18,080. And then last year in 23, there was 900 hours, which would have equated to about 24,000. And I know that the hours are getting smaller and the dollar amount is getting higher, but from your generosity, you're paying us more now with our COLA raises, so
Okay.
All right, well, thank you, Amy.
you're quite welcome. Are you wanting to have this on a future agenda to take action on whether you'd like to have being paid for overtime as an option for our employees?
I mean, I would just because I brought it up, but I
Yeah,
don't know.
I'd like to have the discussion.
Yeah, I'd like to have it as an agenda item.
We'll just go to the HR subcommittee first and then to the board for discussion, or?
No, I think we just go
Yeah, I think
here.
this one just right to the board.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I don't think it's a huge thing to discuss, so
No.
no sense in having a little meeting and a
Yeah.
big meeting, so.
Mr. Mayor, I should probably point out in my memo, not my memo, but I included a letter from the town of Carbondale to County Manager Fred Jarman regarding the newcomers that Carbondale's been struggling with. And I did want to point out, and I'd forgotten about this, I do want to point out that the town manager there in Carbondale is suggesting a regional intergovernmental coordination to respond to the needs of these folks. As you know, Carbondale's pretty much, this issue has landed on Carbondale almost exclusively. And so they're asking for, and they're not making any specific ask of any of us at this point, but I did want to alert you to the fact that she's raising the specter of having sort of a regional response to this issue if it continues and other resources are not sufficient to deal with it. She's making specific asks of Garfield County, but she's just raising the issue of a regional approach.
All right, next up is any other staff members? Any comments or updates? Okay, then we'll jump to, next up is board and board comments. Trustee Flores?
Oh, no, not much tonight. Thank you, though.
Trustee Britton?
I just wanted to thank Public Works. It's in the newsletter, reminding me as I was flipping through this, that I saw it when I took the dogs over the Island Park there, or I call it the dog park. The little wood fence that was built to go around that area that was falling into the river. Much more effective than the signs they've tried to put up and different things that people just threw in the river. This is a pretty substantial structure, and the young man that did it did a good job. So I want to make sure I say thank you to that, because it looks nice over there. In addition, but it's rustic and fits in with what's over there. It looks nice.
All right. Trustee Clausen?
I see your Public Works Director isn't here tonight, but maybe somebody else can answer my question. And I meant to comment on it on last board meeting, but I spaced it. But I noticed that Sarah Flores was named ORC of the water plant, and Casey Carbone was ORC of the wastewater plant. Is Tony Zancanella still involved, or is that changed?
He's still our consulting engineer. We're no longer, well, we will, once all the state paperwork is complete, we will no longer be contracting with him to provide ORC services.
Okay.
But this has been in the works for a long time. Both of them have gotten their qualifications to run the plants, along with quite a bit of time with Tony in moving this thing forward. So yes, it's pretty much a done deal.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. Well, thanks and congratulations to both of them.
Absolutely. We'll have them come in and take a bow.
Achieving that. So
that's a big deal.
Yeah,
For sure.
I think so. And then I had a question of, a few years ago, the town went, with XL Energy and redid a bunch of these streetlights to the LEDs. but it was just those older Cobra head style ones. Are there any plans for, some of the other subdivisions to upgrade those?
I don't,
And yeah, with him not here, there may not be.
well, I mean, we talk pretty frequently.
Yeah.
And I would say that probably not unless, we haven't had that conversation since we worked with them to do those, I can't remember anything. Amy, do you remember any conversations about that?
I do not. I think it was the LED lights went in the 5 months that I was gone, so I wasn't part of those conversations on any future thoughts.
Yeah, I think at the time, we just thought we'd look and see what the impact was.
All right, I was just curious, I mean.
I
if
thought
we could get
Excel
them.
had some federal grant money or something that they had to spend on that. Otherwise, it was gonna cost, otherwise the town had to pay to upgrade them. And Excel had
In
some
that particular instance,
yeah.
yes.
Oh,
I
Okay,
think that's right.
So, yeah, so Excel had some money to pay to upgrade those, so,
got you. Okay,
yeah.
all right.
Otherwise, it's not cheap. I think it was $500 or $600 a light pole
That's not cheap.
to change
Yeah.
a light bulb, yeah,
That's an expensive bulb.
yeah.
Yeah, it is. All right, well, thank you. And then somebody asked me to ask about the supposed burn pile at Autumn Ridge.
From my understanding, Dave Moore applied for a burn permit from from CRFR, and it was denied. So they were told they are not allowed to burn,
Okay,
and they've been piling it up, and they understand that they have to remove it.
gotcha. So I guess that leads me into my next question. So even though burning isn't allowed in town limits, the fire department could still allow somebody to burn in town limits.
No. You can have a pit, you can have a certain fire, but I don't think they can, it has to be under so small. At least that was when I was on the department. They
Okay,
can't do
okay.
a
I just,
big-
I just wanted to make sure the
Yeah.
fire department couldn't, overstep the town's rules.
I don't know, the fire department wouldn't supersede what
No.
the municipal
All right.
code says.
Okay.
Yeah, didn't we just recently find out that our town administrator is the final say in?
Our town administrator is our fire marshal.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
It's my
okay.
other hat.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
So,
So
yeah.
it isn't necessary.
Bring one over for me, Jerry.
Make sure we include that
Gotcha.
in the job description.
Job description, yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, we'll have to. Okay.
Just leave that on your desk.
Yeah, I'm constantly learning about new hats.
New hats.
Get
Yeah.
quite the collection.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you for that, and thank you to town staff and all the employees for doing what they do to keep the town running the way it is.
Okay, trustee Seifert, anything?
Not much. We got a lot accomplished tonight, and thanks everybody for their work.
All right. Mayor Pro Tem?
Just to express my own thanks to Kim Hammond and Tammy Gabriel for continuing to serve on the Vail Board. I know that was part of our consent agenda, but I wanted to point that out specifically. I think a lot of that work goes underappreciated. Second, just wanted to update everyone that I won't be at the February 12th meeting. That's it.
Okay. And I've got nothing. So we do have an executive session, so I'll go ahead and read what I gotta read, and then we'll get that going. So I move to go into executive session to discuss the purchase, acquisition, lease, transfer, or sale of any real property or other property interest under CRX section 24-6-4024A. Discussion on the purchase of property located in the vicinity of 7th Street and Front Street and Grand Avenue and 7th Street. Anyone like to second that?
Second.
All right. Motion by the mayor to enter an executive session, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem. All's in favor?
Aye.
All's opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Jump over to the breakout room. Meeting. Sheila, can you hear us? And we're back in our open meeting?
Yes.
Okay. The time is now 9:10 p.m. in the executive session has concluded. No formal action was taken in the executive session. The participants in the executive session were no one entered the executive session, no one left the executive session. For the record, if any person who participated in the executive session believes that any substantial discussion of any matters not included in the motion to go into executive session occurred during the executive session, or that any improper action occurred during the executive session in violation of the open meetings law, I'd ask that you state your concerns for the record.
None.
Seeing none, the next item on the agenda is adjournment.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by trustee Seaver to adjourn the meeting,
Phoebe.
seconded by trustee Britnall. All's in favor?
Aye.
All's opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you,
Yeah,
everybody.
they get up pretty early to beat you on the.